the best weekend in HBCU football thus far, and what will end up as a top 3 to 5 weekend the entire season, resulted in a major shakeup in our HBCU rankings top 5, and we have a new number 1. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number 1 daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day. Every day, and remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey's over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and now new and existing customers can get $200 back in bonus bets as long as they put down a $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on to make every moment more. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at the SWAC West, because in my opinion, the SWAC West goes through the Tigers. In segment 2, we'll take a look at the new Clark Atlanta. This is a new version of Clark Atlanta. This is not who you saw last year, not only because they won more, but because the culture is clearly different. And in segment 1, we'll be looking at the HBCU rankings. There was a lot of shakeup, and you can thank the best weekend of HBCU football thus far, and what will eventually go down as a top 3 to 5 weekend in HBCU football this season. You can thank them for that. You can thank them for that, because if I'm looking at this list, it doesn't happen if a team like Jackson State doesn't fall. That's your number 1 last week. This week, it's the FAMU Rattlers. They're back at number 1. I kind of feel like they rose to 1. I feel like I remember them being number 1 before Jackson State overtook them. I didn't want to go back and review, but it really, and I will now. So I didn't want to. I really just forgot. But to me, this was a situation where they were the number 1 team, and now you're looking at what's it called? You're looking at them back on top. There's been so many teams who have claimed number 1 this year. It was Alabama State, then it was North Carolina Central, and then I think it was FAMU, and then I think it was Jackson State. But it's been at least 3 now, or it's been at least 4 teams, because whether FAMU was there before or after Jackson State, they were there. But this is interesting because FAMU has had a long time in between that game from South Carolina State, but they played Troy, they played Miami. So now you're seeing them play FBS competition, and it's like they started off their season with these 2 really winnable games. And when I say winnable, I just mean FCS versus FCS, HBCU versus HBCU. And we know that they're one of the best. I don't think I ever doubted if they'd be one of the best. I think I doubted if they'd be the best. But I knew that they would have a talented team because all of the transfers that they brought in were guys that had high expectations. So now you're seeing them beat a team like Norfolk State. You're seeing them beat a team like South Carolina State. But then you go play 2 FBS competition. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to hold that against you. We're not going to hold that against you. Like CeeLo said, you shouldn't hold that against me, though. This is all that I got. Right. And that's all that they have is that South Carolina State and Norfolk State win. I think it counts for something. I think that it counts for something when looking at them. One thing you have to realize is that when it comes to these rankings, it's all about resume, especially this early into the season. It's all about resume. What have you done? Who have you won against? I think those things typically matter. Though I have a bone to pick a little bit later. Grambling is at number 3. They rose up from number 10 after knocking off Jackson State, who was the number 1 team. That is completely deserved. Grambling deserved to be in this top 5. I don't have a problem with their inclusion in the top 3. I think it's correct. I think that they have, this is what I'll say. I think Grambling has the best FCS HBCU victory of 2024 through what, 4 weeks? I would argue that Clark's win over Bethune-Cookman is the best because you're looking at a D2 versus a D1, the way that it happened, all of those things. But we'll get into that to segment 2, so I'll leave that alone for the moment. Grambling probably has the best victory because you're looking at a Jackson State team. See, what separates their win against Jackson State from a North Carolina Central over Alabama State is that we thought we knew Alabama State. And unfortunately, because it was week 1, it almost feels like there's an asterisk on it because you're like, oh, I think they're going to be really good. But then it's like, are they? I don't know. And that's what North Carolina Central gets, unfortunately. I don't think it's fair. I still think they played a really good game, but I don't know how quality of a victory that is because I don't know how quality of an opponent that Alabama State will look like. Honestly, right now, it doesn't look that way. And it was overshadowed by the whole Andrew Body stuff. That's just real. But as far as Jackson State, we know they're good. I think we really do look at Jackson State as a quality team. What I hope doesn't happen is people start picking apart, well, Jackson State didn't, and Jackson State this, and Jackson State that, because it will feel disingenuous and it will feel as if you're trying to tear down the G. Don't do that. Don't do that. Jackson State was a team that we thought was quality. It was a team that we were looking at as one of the best, and Grambling went in there and they just beat them. You got to give them credit for that. I don't want to take away from Jackson State. I'm not even questioning who Jackson State is now. I'm not questioning who Jackson State is after losing to Grambling. I'm looking more brightly at Grambling. I'm not going to tear down the team that I thought was good, guys. I think that if North Carolina Central didn't win the way that they did over A&T, and good God, it was a shellacking. It was bad. It was terrible. It was terrible. If you don't win that way, they might be at 3 and Grambling might be at 2. But you beat North Carolina A&T so senseless that you can't really knock them for that. They got to rise up to number 2. Okay, cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. We get it. Then here come some of my problems. And I want to flip over because I want to make sure I get this right in the order that it is. Morgan State at 4. I'm cool with that. Actually, that's not where my problem started. My problem started at 5 with Hampton. Morgan State, they've done nothing to fall. So they're going to rise because other people fell. So that's natural. Okay. I don't think that's really a conversation piece. Hampton at 5. I'm sorry. I don't think the Howard win looks that great right now. Where was Hampton at coming into this list? Hampton was 10. Grambling was actually 7. So Hampton was at 10 and they rose all the way up to 5. No, Howard was 9. They were 1 apart from each other. Because of the rivalry, you skyrocket them? Last week, Howard was the 9th best team on these rankings. Hampton was the 10th best team in these rankings. 10 beat 9 and they catapult to 5? Come on, man. No. And I'm a little bit more passionate because I really want to say it should be TSU. I don't have the greatest argument. If TSU beats Lamar, they're 4. If TSU beats Lamar, they are 4. I will talk about this later, but I need you to understand that TSU went to a number 22, top 25 opponent and took them down to the wire with their backup quarterback and maybe 1A, 1B, but like maybe not their best running back. TSU went to Lamar, a top 25 team, and took them the distance. Lamar needed a last-minute touchdown to defeat a Texas Southern without their number 1 quarterback and possibly their best running back. I'm just saying, I see the argument, but at the same time, if you keep them below a Jackson State, I get it. You keep them below a Tennessee State, I get it, because where they were on the rankings, and at the end of the day, Tennessee State, they lost, but so did Texas Southern. Jackson State lost, but so did Texas Southern. I'm sorry, I just don't think that Hampton, because of the rivalry, should have catapulted. Because of the rivalry, I don't think they should have catapulted. And that's the reason I think that they did. I do not agree with this. But here's the other thing. How hard can I fight? Hampton's 3-1. I'm objective. I have my opinions. I may even have my biases. I tend to acknowledge them. I don't think that this is one of them. I would have liked to see Texas Southern at what? They were at 8, so I would have liked to see them at 7 with a chance to move in the top 5. They win this week, they're top 5. Texas Southern wins this week. They are a top 5 team in HBCU football. Whew. Never thought I'd be saying that. But it's as good as you could look in a victory. But I didn't feel like it got that nod. So Hampton's 3-1. Are we respecting a Norfolk State win? Are we? Are we respecting a Virginia Union win? Are we? Virginia Union's a great team, but they're D2. And that was a closer one than you liked. Are we taking the Howard win with their backup quarterback? I'm just saying. They lost to Morgan. I'm just saying. I don't know. I just don't see Hampton top 5. I just haven't loved their resume in 2024. That's the way that I'm looking at it. So we'll see. We'll see what it's going to be. But as we push forward, a team that you won't see on these rankings, a team you won't see is Clark Atlanta. But I'll tell you right now, this is a completely new team. This is a completely new culture. And we'll look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Roy. Now, here's the thing. Drum roll, please. Roy is the new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. Download the Roy app from the iOS or Android, whether you have iOS or Android, and enter the referral code LOCKED on. Make sure you put a space between locked and on, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5K cash. No purchase necessary and void where prohibited. This week, we selected Boogie Trotter from Tennessee State because he was able to make a game-changing play. That interception return for a touchdown, it absolutely changed the game. He was able to recover a fumble. This guy was amazing for the Tigers against Tennessee Tech. So I'm giving Boogie Trotter $100 on Roy for being our game of the week. If you are player of the week, if you were impressed as we were with his performance on Saturday, you can show him some love too. Just hop on Roy, throw a few bucks. If everybody pitches in $10, it adds up fast for Trotter. Now you have the chance to show Trotter your appreciation and his standout performance this week, as well as what he'll bring to your program. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Support the players and change the game. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is the only place that I would tell you to go if you're a small business owner, right? Let's say that you make candles, right? We're not going to promote it. We're just going to make it look like it's blank. Say you make candles and you want to find some new people to help with your PR because you want to have different advertisements. LinkedIn is the place for that. Let's go ahead and light this candle, right? Boom. You want to go ahead and get yourself some PR. That's how you do it. Maybe you want to hire them out to the south for that. We got it. Can y'all see it? Y'all with it? Just that simple. You can find somebody just like me. But matter of fact, they could probably do it better. That's my little sales pitch. Go to my LinkedIn, Darian Gray. You may even find candle making PR on there. But you can go ahead and do it for yourself, right? You have small businesses who they don't even leave. 76% of small businesses get a hire within the first 24 hours. 76% of people don't even leave once they put on their resume on LinkedIn. It's just that simple. So go to LinkedIn.com. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to get your job today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. If you need somewhere to go for your second listen, go check out Locked On Texas, because Locked On Longhorns specifically, I think it's called. First episode of every week. Jonathan Davis, Tony Monk, they're doing great work, so make sure you go check them out. This is a new Clark Atlanta. This is. Siri, play New Atlanta, because things are different for Clark. Things are different for Clark. Their whole culture is different. I have a list of a couple of things that I feel like they've been able to do over. My Siri really played. And that's not the song I told them to play. They talk about, look, Ma, I made it. I said, play New Atlanta. I didn't really want them to play it, so I didn't say Siri's name. But that's funny. They have a new coach. They have a new quarterback. And everything is working the way that you wanted it to work. It is. See, here's the thing. The most games that they've won, I don't want to jinx it. But they won 3 games this year, and the most that they've ever won in the last decade is 5 in a single season. They look poised to break that. They look poised to have their best record in over a decade. That's what Clark Atlanta looks like they're ready for. And I understand that there are a lot of eyes on what happened with Bethune-Cookman. And without a doubt, I think that may be the best victory in HBCU football this year because it was just insane. For you to be able to, first off, for you to be Clark Atlanta, knowing your history, knowing that you won no games last year, knowing that you've been a program that has struggled to stack victories, for you to come in and beat an FCS opponent, that speaks volumes. For you to be able to come in and beat an FCS opponent, it announces to everybody in the SIAC, we are without a doubt a player in this. If you doubted it after we hung 45 in the first game, if you doubted it after we beat Allen on our new red field, if you doubted it, this is done. There's no more doubting. This is a new era for Clark Atlanta. They came back from behind to beat Bethune-Cookman. There's D2 programs when there's teams when you go up a subdivision. D3, D2, like D2 to FCS, FCS to FBS. There's even group of 5 to Power 4 that will lay down when you're down the way that Clark was down to a team on a higher subdivision, which Bethune-Cookman is. They didn't lay down. When I tell you this is a new era, this is a new era for Clark Atlanta. And I want to point out a couple of things. The most impressive change for me is the fact that Clark has found the ability to finish. Losing programs, losing teams don't win games like they won against Bethune-Cookman. Losing programs, losing teams don't win games like they won against Allen. Let's look at what they did against Bethune-Cookman. They were down 31-7 at one point. They were down 34-14 at halftime. They ended up winning 38-37. They only allowed 3 points to Bethune-Cookman in the last 30 minutes of action. They stacked on 24 points of their own. They added 10 points in the last 5 minutes of the game. They had a game-winning field goal with triple zeros on the clock. These are not things that losing programs do. This is what I mean when I say that there's a new culture within Clark Atlanta. Let's look at the Allen game. When it comes to Allen, they were struggling to punch the ball into the end zone all game long. They had multiple field goals after they drove down the field. Only one touchdown on the day. Matter of fact, in the second half, they were struggling to get offense flowing at all. Right? And with less than a minute on the clock, you come in and you score a touchdown. This is 2 weeks or 2 games because one was postponed, right? They had a game that was called in the middle of it. That's why they have a tie on their record. But you're looking at 2 games that finished in a row, Allen and Bethune-Cookman, in which Clark Atlanta made the plays when they needed to. These are not things that losing programs and losing teams do. There is a new culture in Clark Atlanta. I don't know. There's not a song that says new Clark Atlanta, but this is play new Atlanta, man. I didn't say it, so I know it's not gonna play. But this is what you're seeing. You're seeing a team that finds ways to win. When have you seen that from Clark Atlanta? When have you seen them find ways to win? Whether they're hanging up 45 or they're in the 20s or in the 30s. Like, you're seeing an offensive explosion. Let's look at Armani Harris. He was their second leading receiver on the day. He had 3 of the 4 touchdowns that came from David Wright. He threw a touchdown of his own on a trick play. So you're accounting for 4 touchdowns. In my opinion, I don't know if the SIAC, let's see if the SIAC has released their player of the week, because I think that it should be them. Or it should be him, Armani Harris. Let's see, weekly honors. See, they gave it to David Wright, which I'm not mad because he is the quarterback. But I just think that the ability for Harris to throw a touchdown, catch 3 of them, it's special, guys. That's special for him. But that's okay. I understand why they would give it to David Wright. He is the quarterback at the end of the day. I get it. And he did get a Joey's helmet sticker on ESPN college football. So we'll give it to him. And you won a game as the quarterback over a team that's a higher subdivision. You got to give them that nod. But they're 3-0-1 for the first time in school history. I'm going to assume that this is the first time that they're undefeated. through 4 games in school history. I'm going to assume that this isn't some scoregami thing where, well, this score has never happened. They've never technically been 3-0-1. If you've been 4-0, this feels like a weird thing to celebrate, but neither here nor there. In general, I just think that this is a great win. They're 3 wins, 4 games into the season, haven't lost a game yet. They feel poised to smack that 5-win record over the last decade plus and say, no, we're going to go to 5, 6. Because you go to 5 now, you have a winning record for the first time in a decade. You get to 6, you have a winning record for the first time in a decade. They're going against another undefeated team this week. This will be one to watch. It'll be very fun. This will be a very fun matchup to watch. So shout out to Clark Atlanta, man. I'm loving what I'm seeing. This is a new culture. This is a culture that finds a way to win. This is a culture that does not lay down. This is a culture that believes in winning and believes that they deserve to win. You can see it in how the games transpire. Weak culture, weak-minded people, they quit in multiple situations that they have. Instead, they came out victorious. So as we push forward, let's keep it in the South. But let's go to Grambling, Louisiana, and let's go to Houston, Texas, because the SWAC West runs through the Tigers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, all customers, new and existing, they'll get $200 back in bonus bets if you put down a $5 bet. It's simple. The NFL is here. Put some money down on Lamar Jackson. Put some money. Matter of fact, Dak Prescott, Malik Neighbors, and Trayvon Diggs apparently had a little bit of back and forth on social media. I haven't looked into it too much, but put some money down on Neighbors. Matter of fact, I even seen that Jimmy Butler's new hairstyle is something that you could put some money down on. The bets get outrageous. They all get $200 back in bonus bets if you put down a $5 bet. So it's up to you. If I were you, I would be going to FanDuel right now. As I'm talking, I'd be like, oh, okay, I got you, Mount of the South. FanDuel.com/locked on. You said put down a $5 bet, new or existing, and I'll get $200 back in bonus bets. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That is what I said. So go ahead and go to FanDuel.com/locked on. Take advantage of the NFL, WNBA, NBA, MLB, NHL, everything in between. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on to make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. And so far from what I've seen this season, the SWAC West runs through the Tigers, and I understand that there's a couple of Tigers in that division. I think it runs through both of them. Right now, Grambling and Texas Southern look like the best teams in that division. Let's go through it. Southern, Texas Southern, Grambling, UAPB, Alcorn, PV. Southern, I'm sorry. I seen them up close and personal. I seen what happened with Jackson State. They just do not impress me, and they have a lot to do to make it up for me. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not saying they're dead in the water. That may be PV. But technically, Southern is at the top of this because they have one conference win with a better record than TSU. But I'm not a believer in Southern. They have a lot to do to make it up to me because I watched a couple of their games up close and personal. Or I watched one game up close and personal, and then the next one was our game of the week. And in my opinion, they did not perform well in either one, but they do have a defense that I think can make some plays. Texas Southern, that's who we're talking about. We'll get to them in a second. Grambling, same with them. UAPB, Alcorn, they haven't shown. Opportunities have been limited, I will admit. They haven't shown us much. Is Alcorn as bad as they were against Vanderbilt? No. Would it be as bad as they were against McNeese State? I don't think so. But have they shown you much reason to be excited? Have they? You tell me. Gee, where you at? Like, if you hear me, let me know if there's a reason to be excited about what's going on at Alcorn. No trash talk, legitimately. I'm not seeing it. Same with UAPB. They fought to keep it close with Tennessee State, but I don't know. And I have to acknowledge opportunities matter. Opportunities matter. But at the same time, TSU played Lamar, played a top 25 team. And that's the one I feel like I really need to lean into. They took a top 25 team to the wire without their starting quarterback. Danny Green may be their best running back. He was against PV, and you had another running back go for 150. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying, you know what, this reminds me of Ladarius Owens and Ja'Cory Howard. That's a great example because those were two really good running backs, and they were 1A, 1B. That may be this. You're telling me TSU could have a really legitimate running game? A really legitimate running game that could run for 100, a running back could run for 150 on a top 25 team. If we were talking about any school with some sort of pedigree, any school with some sort of recent success, we'd be blowing this up. But because it's Texas Southern and because they haven't been good recently, I think there's still a level of skepticism, which I understand, but I'm not here to be skeptical. I'm here to tell you that they almost beat a top 25 team without one of their two best first off, without their starting quarterback, without one of their two best running backs. That's what we're talking about here. And they still looked good on the ground, still almost got it done. Things can change. It's the first week of SWAC play, but so far the SWAC West goes through the Tigers. Then you're looking at Grambling, who I just talked about in segment 1, so I don't feel like I need to say too much more. But they have the best FCS victory. They beat Jackson State, a team that has an argument for being the best team in the SWAC East, and they beat them well. Grambling looks good. Grambling impresses. I think because Grambling has history, it's a little bit easier to accept that they could look good. Somebody even said, hey, you ain't gonna keep the G down for long. You ain't gonna do it. Grambling's shown me a lot. Opportunistic defense. I think they have some really good linebackers. I love what I've seen from Brendan Burley. I love it. There's 2 interceptions over the last 2 weeks, I should say. Looked very comfortable in coverage. Looked very well in space with his spatial awareness. I liked it. I'm looking at the Caleb Lee Collins. I'm looking at Patrick Marshall. I'm looking at their ability to continuously generate turnovers. It's not gonna be 5-6 a game, of course, but you can see them stacking up. This is what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Has Southern shown you that? Has UAPB shown you that? PV looks dead in the water. PV loses this week. Their season, kiss it goodbye. It's over. They lose this week. They're not winning the SWAC West. 3 losses to Grambling, Southern, and Texas Southern. You're not winning the division with that. They're in a must-win situation. UAPB, Alcorn, they ain't shown you that. Things can change. If you think I'm passionate right now, which I am, we ratcheting it up. If Jackson State falls for a second week in a row to a set of Tigers, but this time it's the Texas Southern Tigers. Oh my God, I will become unbearable because for the first time, I'll have some real reasons, tangible reasons, not just hope, to be excited about my alma mater in football. I hope I can come back to you on Monday and tell you all about it. But on Friday or on tomorrow, we'll be looking at the 3 games of the week that aren't our game of the week that we're excited about. I'm still conflicted on what it's going to be. You'll find out tomorrow. In the meantime, between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Woo, that felt good. Stay blessed. Peace.